coverage of Mayweather versus Guerrero is like nothing we've ever seen. The reason? The reemergence of Showtime Championship Boxing and Showtime pay-per-view back to that lofty level that they had back when Mike Tyson was fighting and Julio Cesar Chavez. One of the main reasons, their new head of sports, Stephen Espinoza, who sat down with us and spoke about everything boxing and everything business. You're a boxing fan from way back. How did you get involved in the sport?
Well, I'm a boxing fan because of my grandfather, you know, and I just grew up with him having it on around the house all the time. It was probably the #1 sport in our house. I became sort of involved in the sport in a more direct way when I started representing Oscar, which was the year 2000. It was after the Trinidad fight. He had sort of wiped the slate clean, started over with a new team. He started with Richard Schaefer. I was brought in shortly after Richard was brought in. And I've represented Oscar and by extension Golden Boy, you know, since then until I came to Showtime. Along the way, I also picked up Mike Tyson as a client. You know, between those two, that accounts for quite a bit of work, you know, within the sport.
How did your work at Golden Boy prepare you for the segue on to heading up sports at Showtime?
Working with Golden Boy was a great preparation. It gave me a perspective that I think few executives have, and that's being on the promoter side, being first on the individual fighter side with Oscar as a fighter, and then, you know, helping build the business of Golden Boy Promotions, you know, from its very first TV show, you know, which was in HBO Boxing After Dark, all the way through pay-per-views. So, you know, having that 10 years plus of experience of seeing the other half of the equation, I think has really benefited me greatly in making the transition. I'm not sure I could have done it without that experience.
Stephen, what was your first order of business when you took the job at Showtime?
I think my philosophy relies a little bit more on the power of brands and star names, which are, you know, great when you can get them. You know, they're a little bit more expensive, as we can see from Mayweather and others. But what I set out to do was try to sort of associate our sports platform with the biggest and most powerful brands that I could. And that meant sort of looking at some of the established stars in the sport. The very first fight that I bought was Ortiz versus Berto, the rematch, which never happened. That was sort of starstruck fight in itself. But that was, you know, at that point, probably the most highly anticipated fight at the time. You know, and then it sort of expanded beyond just boxing, looking at 60-minute sports. So we didn't have a news show or a news magazine or a documentary show. So associating ourselves with 60 Minutes in the 60-minute sports spinoff was the quickest way to advance the brand, you know, because the 60 Minutes brand is the most highly respected and, you know, probably highly valued brand in all of television. And the credibility that we got just by associating ourselves with that and getting those quality producers on our air, you know, really allowed us to skip several steps up in the development of our brand.
The perception is out there that here's where the battle lines have been drawn, and you know where I'm going with this. That Showtime is Golden Boy and Top Rank is HBO. Your answer to that?
I want the best fights, you know, period. So whether it's you know, it's Top Rank or any other promoter, you know, if someone's got a good fight that I think fits on our network, absolutely, I'm going to be chasing that fight just like anyone else. I mean, I chased very aggressively the Mars Donaire fight. No, that obviously got caught up in a lot of politics, but, you know, the fact that it was a Top Rank fighter in, you know, Donaire didn't give me pause at all. You know, there were fights as recently as, you know, October, November of last year that I bid on from Top Rank. So, you know, in terms of that approach, I haven't been successful in getting Top Rank fights. Absolutely, you know, love to have some of their top tier programming.
But the dialogue for you is there.
Oh, you know what, my door's open. My phone number is, you know, hasn't changed. And I reach out when there's programming available. Now, having said that, you know, there has been criticism and some questioning about consistently having a lot of Golden Boy programming. You know, and my approach on that, and this is probably because I come from a little bit of experience in the general market television, non-sports as well, is, you know, no one really said to NBC that they had too many Dick Wolf shows. You know, nobody says to CBS they have too many Jerry Bruckheimer shows. If it's good programming, it's good programming. And the last 2 weeks are a perfect example. It doesn't matter that, you know, the last 2 weeks were Golden Boy shows. The reality is those are some of the best shows in the last couple of years. And anyone who thinks that I acquired those shows because I was giving Golden Boy a favor, you know, doesn't understand the sport. Those are great shows. Any network would be lucky to have them.
You know, it's going to be interesting because I'm pretty close to Floyd and have followed him for so many years. He's fought like 6 times in the last 5 years. Your deal with him is 6 fights over 30 months. So how are you going to make that happen?
You know, I think I'm not going to profess to be an expert on Floyd Mayweather, personally, certainly. I'm sure you know him far better. But my sense of him is that, you know, with all the time to think and reflect on what he wants to do over the next couple of years, I think he's refocused. And he's sort of came out thinking, hey, I've got a good at least 30 months here. I'm going to, you know, go hard, you know, do some great events, and see where I am in 30 months. I've heard him say, look, at 30 months, he's getting close to 40. Doesn't think it'll go much longer than that, but who knows? But what I do think he is 100% committed to is being very active for this last stretch run, whether it's 2 years or 3 years. I think one of these rationales is, you know, at his age, in the late 30s, you can't afford to go through that cycle of preparing yourself and then, you know, letting your body sort of recover for 9 months. It just doesn't work. Candidly, and I have this opinion whether we had to deal with him or not. I've never quite understood the criticism of Floyd in terms of the perception that he runs either as a fighter or he runs and carefully selects his opponents. I mean, if you look at, you know, his last half dozen opponents, you know, Cotto that was put aside Pacquiao because that was, again, caught up in a lot of politics. Cotto was the toughest fight that he could have taken. You know, Victor Ortiz was a young, strong, hungry, you know, fighter.
Southpaw.
Yeah. Certainly he could have taken a lot easier fights than that. You know, everyone said, oh, you know, Marquez is a little bit older. You know, we now see what Marquez still had left. So the reality is, I've never had a doubt in terms of his willingness to take on tough fights.
What are your goals with Showtime, and beyond that, your goals for the sport of boxing?
I really enjoy introducing the sport, you know, to the casual fan and the non-fan. You know, the goal for Showtime and our TV production, I think we made advances in terms of this element, but we have a little way to go. I want to get to the point where the TV experience is as exciting and as gripping and compelling as the live experience. I think we're getting there, but I want the TV viewer to have the same goosebumps that you and I will feel on Saturday night during the walkout. You know, and I think that sense of excitement is just going to expand the fan base even more.
Well, you've done a wonderful job so far. A lot of great stuff. Floyd Mayweather and Robert Guerrero and Canelo Alvarez. One of my favorites, Lucas Matisse. A plethora of pugilistic talent that you have, and best of luck, continued success.
Thank you very much.